These are critical times in the life of the Independence Reformed Bible Church. We have an election that is extremely divisive. Probably most of you, or some of you, have already lost friends, at least for now, over this thing. In our teaching time, our Sunday school class, we've been talking about bibliology, a subject which shouldn't be so difficult, but is. And that's a subject that will separate people in a hurry. And now we're talking about prophecy, eschatology. You don't think that topic divides people? It absolutely does. Because all these topics are very personal. You see, this is we're right in that area there where our modern culture has left us. I don't know if I've ever illustrated this before, my little X here, this little X graph, right? The X graph goes like this, and we've been affected by it as Christians. Down here are things that we're allowed, are not important, right? Put this as 0. If it's not important, then up here is this X, part of the X on the axis, if you will, is the degree to which we're allowed to talk about it, right? So down here, if it's unimportant, we're up here allowed to talk about it, right? Right? We have a large degree. But as we go up the scale here, in importance, you see the degree to which we're allowed to talk about it goes down. See that? Then all the way here, where it's really important, like life and death, heaven and hell, that's where we're at the scale down here, where we're not allowed to talk about it at all. That's pretty much our culture now. And if you haven't noticed, you haven't been on Facebook, you haven't been out talking to people, you'll notice that the rules being set for us to be allowed to talk to those who don't believe in Christ, the rules are being set by the wicked, not by us. That's how it's going. So here we are, talking about these things all at the same time. Difficult topics. Why would we do this? I mean, I've been around churches. I know that you don't talk about things like bibliology. You can go to a church for 25 years and never talk about it. Prophecy, you just talk about things that everybody agrees with and you move on. That's what you do. Why are we doing these things? We're doing these things because it is our hope that by God's grace, every family in here, every person in here will be able to go out from this place and fully engage the enemies of Christ. So we do these things. And I know they're controversial. We know this. John and I know this. Our view is like almost the opposite. It's almost like the more controversial it is, the more we have to talk about it. Kind of. Yeah, I was talking to someone this week. So the IRBC is really different. Most churches make it easy to come to and hard to leave. We're kind of opposite. Hard to come to, easy to leave. We don't want to captivate anybody's conscience. But the fact that we don't want to captivate anybody's conscience makes it even more necessary to deal with these things that are challenging and difficult and necessary. Who has the first question? We have. Thank you. I think that's running, right? Yeah, good. It's working. Thank you. Yeah.
So it would be certainly possible to have different views on these things, but be able to work with other people that share different views. So that would be probably a positive thing to be able to do that, would you say?
Yeah, did you all hear the question? Is it possible to work with people, or it is possible, or it should be possible to work with people who have different views? I believe I got that right, correct?
Yeah, I was just, I would assume that you would agree with that.
Yeah, and here's the thing. It depends on what you mean by different views. I've had the privilege of work with people who really disagree with me on what I've just said. But I think they're being inconsistent, but they're applying what they can. I know other people have all the doctrinal statements down to a T. And they might agree with me in an academic discussion, but they cannot seem to get off their back feathers to do anything. So I ask which one believes what and which one applies what. You see what I'm saying? It's one thing to say something. It's another thing what you do. And I always remember that one parable by Christ here, and you remember it, I'm sure, where there were two sons who were told what to do. And the one son says to his dad gives him direction, do this. Yeah, Dad. Yeah, I'll do it. And doesn't do it. And the other son says, nah, I'm not going to do it. And then he goes out and does it. And then Christ asks, which one actually did his father's will? He said, well, the second one did, because he actually acted. Ultimately here, we're not talking about academic beliefs here. We're talking about what we do in the end. Some people act inconsistently. I'm thrilled to work with them. And I hope I still can. Don't know if they'll work with me. They do. Actually had a good talk with a man who's been out with me on, I was out with him on one, was going to go with the second one, was able to do it. Really, I mean, he's always sending me, well, he used to, not so much anymore, different stuff on Israel, prophecy, it's the end, that kind of stuff. But he was out there with me on, at a so-called Pride Fest that I was with. And I think there's plenty of people that would actually kind of line up with me, with what I just said, but would never do anything like that. And not that they have to be out there every time, every weekend. I get it. I understand it. But there's some that would never do it. I mean, I know, honestly, Jeremiah, I know folks that would line up with me pretty much everything I said, and their children they can't apply it to their own families. So my question is, what do you really believe? It's one thing to say you have an academic belief. It's another thing to say, you know what, I'm going to act on this. And we all know what we really believe is not known by what we say, right? What we really believe is always measured by what we do about it. That's what tells us what we really believe. So yeah, I can work with them. I'll just work to try to help them be more consistent in their belief system. Truly. Because I believe I'm consistent, I believe they're not. Yes, right here.
Not sure I'll formulate this correctly, but so you got one set of beliefs that says that Christ is coming back again and there'll be a tribulation and
Right, sure.
things are getting worse. And,
Right.
And you have another set of belief that things are getting better.
Right.
On the one hand, if the
But by the way, you did formulate that correctly.
okay,
That's as simple as that can be, and yeah.
I'm trying to formulate it.
Yeah.
So if that belief system that things are getting worse and Christ is going to come back, if that drives people to get out and preach the gospel more because Christ is coming back soon and things are getting worse and we are, whatever, they're going to preach all the more. Versus here where things are getting better and it will constantly get better and doesn't drive people out to preach the gospel, Matthew 28, go into all the nations. It gets back to what you're saying. It's what we do. I don't know, and so put aside what eschatology you believe for a minute. It does get back to what you do. So I don't think over here everyone's not doing anything because they think there's no use to it, and therefore I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to be myself and worry about myself. I don't think that's the case over here. I think a lot of people who believe differently are out trying to preach the gospel. And then over here, I think there's other people who are thinking things are getting better, and they're not doing anything because it's going to get better. So again, it gets back to what you do, and it's the commands. What are we commanded to do? We're commanded to go into all the nations, preach the gospel. So I struggle a little bit with, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. What if you're wrong? what if the other side's right? What if they're right? What if they're wrong? You're right. I don't know. Does it matter? We're really told to. We have to obey the commandments, and the commandment is to go out and preach the gospel. I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of smarter people than I, and I'm still not clear what my eschatology is. And I'll be honest and expose myself. I don't know. Does it matter for me? No, I'm going to go out and preach the gospel. I need to preach the gospel every day. I need to preach the gospel to my family. I need to preach the gospel to my neighbors. I need to preach the gospel at work. I need to be Christ. I don't know. That's just what's swirling around in my head. So.
Okay, let me hang on the mic for just a second. Let's just ask this question. Do you think that Christ, who says, all authority is given to me in heaven and earth, therefore go and teach all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Do you think the fact that he said, all authority is given to me in heaven and earth, do you think that makes any difference to what he said? Or do you think it just, if he just said, go and teach all nations, whether or not I have the authority, that doesn't make any difference?
Do I think he has authority? Absolutely, he has authority.
Okay, but do you think him stating that right there makes a difference in what he said to them? Or could he have just said, go and teach all nations, it doesn't matter if I have authority or not?
I think he does have authority, currently.
But what difference does it make in that statement that he makes to them?
I don't know.
Okay, all right, it's fair answer.
I don't know what makes a difference. I mean, does Christ reign today? Yes, he does. Is he delaying coming back so that more might come to the banquet? I don't know. I don't know that. I struggle with it. And I mean, because to me, I don't see things getting better. I see things getting a lot worse. I mean, we got the underground church in Asia. Okay. Europe, I've been to. Boy, that's a desolate place.
Sure.
South America, I don't see. I mean, I see pockets, but I don't know. I struggle with it because I
Sure.
don't see things getting better.
This is a good discussion here.
Yeah.
So you see things getting worse going forward?
Yeah.
Do you see them getting better going backwards?
No.
Well, you have to.
I don't know what that means. Tell me. I'm not sure.
Okay, if things are getting worse, we're at this point in history, right? And going this way.
At this point in history.
Right.
At least
Right.
this point in history.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
At least this point in history.
Okay, but they could in fact get better at some other
could.
point
They
in
could.
history. Okay.
They could.
All right.
Don't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And see, that's where I think we need this broader look.
But should that change, whether I believe that or not, should that change what I do today?
And I think it does.
I think
Yeah.
the answer is no.
Yeah. And I think the answer is yes. And the reason why.
Well, I think the answer is it doesn't matter whether, I don't think it matters because we're still commanded to go out and preach the gospel.
Right.
So
But-
whether things are getting better or worse, or things will ultimately continue to get better, does that change what I do today? I don't think so.
Right.
I don't think it does.
Yeah.
It's to your point. I think that's what Jeremiah was saying. So if I believe that things are getting worse, and you believe things are getting better, should that change what we do today? And I think the answer is no, it shouldn't change. We should still go out and preach the gospel.
Yeah.
So,
And it's not limited to that. And by the way, let's thank Tim for engaging me in this discussion. Thank you, Tim.
very courageous of me because I just exposed myself to my ignorance.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, no. Of course, the rest of us have it all figured out, right?
Of course.
I have it all figured out, of course. To respond to that just a little bit, I'll just say this. I've had this type of discussion often before, and I have had people say to me, yeah, I believe we're supposed to preach. But then they have admitted to me that today's theology would not have gotten the Pilgrims across the ocean, would not have gotten David Livingstone to India, and would not have gotten William Carey David Livingstone to Africa, would not have gotten William Carey to India. So it has to do, I believe there's a lot going on here with what we believe about the kingdom of Christ and what he has said will be effective, and the the statements like the gates of hell will not prevail, and that final battle between the gates of hell and Christ, the Christ Church, that it won't fail. I want to get back to you, Tim, if you want to come back on that. We have some other questions. Thank you again for engaging this, because that's a discussion we have to engage in. Well, the discussion we just engaged in, Tim, is why we have this question and answer time. So thank you. Yes?
Is Jesus coming back in your eschatology, or did he already come back?
He has come. He has come at least once, right?
Oh, yeah, I mean, coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe in the second coming. I just don't believe in the imminent rapture.
Oh, okay.
I believe in the second coming. I don't believe in the imminent rapture. I don't believe that there is a rapture that can occur at any time, and neither does nearly anyone. Let me just address that for a minute, because that's what we've heard, that even the early church believed that Christ could come back at any moment, right? We've heard that. And that the church is supposed to live as if Jesus Christ can come back at any moment, right? And then we hear about fulfilled prophecy that will allow him to come back. Wait a minute. You can't do both. Can you? Can you? If he can come back at any time, we need fulfilled prophecy, and he can't come back at any time until prophecy is fulfilled. Right? Jim.
I think eschatology is very important, maybe more in the area of what we do rather than whether we do anything. My observation is if someone's inclined to be apathetic, if they're a premillennialist, they'll just use their eschatology to justify it. Well, Christ is coming back, so I may as well not bother to do anything. But if they're postmillennial, they'll say, well, this is a long-term thing from the ground up, and there's really nothing we can do right here. It's just, let the next generation worry about it, and they'll get it all right. So, I think maybe the eschatology has a greater bearing on what we do rather than whether or not we do anything, because whether or not we do anything is kind of up to us, regardless of what we believe about eschatology.
We are responsible. I sure don't have every detail worked out, but we're still responsible to obey Christ. Absolutely. Yes?
I see it as each one of us are born into this time. And when you come to Christ, you have a job to do. And if, you're convicted of that and you don't do it, I think it's sinful. And if I didn't believe that he was, had authority, I wouldn't go out in the street. I'm out there because I know that he is there with me, that he has given me orders to do that. And I just know from all the time that I was in prison that I know that he was with me every bit of the way, and that's why I can do it.
There is a significant theological strain out there that denies that Jesus Christ is king right now. Significant. I don't know how you can do that. But that is a very significant strain going on out there today, right now. A lot to say about that. And I probably wouldn't have taken this time. In fact, I wouldn't have. In fact, when I started 1 Corinthians 15, I did not want to take the time that we've taken to get off on this topic. But Paul's application that we've been reading the last 3 weeks just jumped out at me and hit me over the head. And I can't get away from what I believe Paul is saying there is saying that there is a connection between what we believe about the future and how we act today. If anybody wants to challenge me on that's not what Paul's saying. I'll be glad to listen to that as well. I actually didn't want to do it, but this section saying that Christ is ruling, he's ruling until his enemies are under his feet. I don't know about you, but for me it's completely inspiring. That's an inspiring picture. And this king in Psalm 2 inspired those prayers in Acts 4. And that's the inspiration I think we need to take here. We have a king who's ruling, and we must act accordingly. We have another question right here. Oh, was there something? No, yours. Yeah.
A comment for Tim about the pre-mill versus the post-mill and the gospel. It depends on, part of it depends on what gospel it is, I believe, that you're preaching. The gospel, when people say, get out there and preach the gospel, you can mean it the way Billy Graham means it. We're just going to try to get people saved and put notches on a belt. Because if you believe in the imminent rapture, all you're worried about is that individual's salvation so that he does not go to hell versus, going to heaven. That's a good thing. That is often said as that's the first rung on the ladder. If you're postmillennial, you see the other rungs, which has to do with the full-orbed gospel of the kingdom and the work we have to do to recapture all the things that Adam lost. We are reconstructing this world in the image that God had originally intended. And so there's so much work to be done in politics, in education, in business, where we recapture all of the institutions that have been lost ground to Satan. And that's a bigger gospel than just individual salvation. So I think that that's a part of that. I know for me, when I finally got my arms around this idea of the kingdom being victorious, that I finally felt I had a purpose, and that all of the commands, all of the laws that are put forth in the gospel, in the Bible, finally had some meaning. They didn't seem to have a whole lot of meaning when all we were trying to do was save souls. So I believe that's a different way of looking at that.
Yeah, you can take it back, get back to Tim. Yes. At least be able to hear you.
So, and I think personal salvation is, why do people raise a hand at a Billy Graham conference because it's fire insurance, or are they saved because they want to be saved, or are we saved for Christ ultimately? I mean, we're not saved for ourselves. Our salvation is really for Christ. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really not for us.
That's the gospel that needs to be preached.
Right. I mean, so that makes the gospel even more powerful. So it's not about us.
Yes.
It's not about us. There's nothing about us. We were created to glorify God. We're saved to glorify God all the more. Yeah, I mean, so to raise a hand and say, I want to be saved from hell, that's good.
Who doesn't?
But who doesn't, right? Versus, I want to be saved because I'm a sinner and I know I'm going to hell, but ultimately it's going to be for God's glory so that I can glorify Him more. I mean, isn't that the salvation? Isn't that really truly the gospel, I guess?
Agreed.
Yeah, okay. So.
Another question right here. Comment.
This is just a comment. I just did some research for a talk, and in trying to convince me of postmillennial,
Well, it's hard enough to pronounce. I get it.
Bing used to say to me, Beth, look, Jesus started with 12 disciples, and today there are 2 billion Christians. And I just went and looked, and that is indeed right again, the man is. But also, since 1910, Christianity has quadrupled in the world. I mean, it's definitely, and what he convinced me is I was looking at the wrong things, saying everything's getting worse. God is growing His church, and I'm looking at the sin of man rather than at what God was doing. And so anyway, I just thought those were good statistics for people to hear.
Thank you. We have a king. His kingdom is moving forward. Right now. Exactly right. John just said, with or without us. It's moving. Well, thank you very much for your kind attention here. I got to tell you, as a pastor, I'm just thrilled each week that people come back. I am. I just am. Praise God for that. And I trust that you pray for me, that when I stand up and preach, I'm taking what I'm saying very seriously, that I'm not on my own soapbox some kind of way, which would be an awful thing, but that truly I'm up here to glorify Christ, honor his word, and promote his kingdom. Thank you again for your kind attention and good discussion here this morning. John.